Hello everybody and welcome back to another Oscar prediction video where today we will be taking a look at the category of Best Director. So, coming down to the wire, only a few more videos to go, and this category is tough. It's funny, there are so many years where even if Best Picture is up in the air, you at least have a good enough sense of who's winning director. But this year, if anything, director is more of a question mark than picture. It seemed early on that there was going to be a clear-cut frontrunner, and then they started losing in a bunch of places where they weren't expected to lose. And so now, looking at this race, I think it is definitely a two-way race. I don't see any of the other three with a realistic shot, and yet it's a real question mark. I genuinely don't know what to do, but we're gonna try to figure this out. Fifth most likely to win is Jacques Audiard for Emilia Perez. Okay, so if I'm being 100% realistic, I feel like he's probably not number 5, but I want him to be number 5. Audiard has come under so much controversy for this movie specifically, and I think in the beginning there was some talk that he could potentially get a little bit further because the movie is very big, very flashy. It's a musical. It's one of the films with the showiest direction of the bunch, which does definitely help him. But because of the controversy and because of his statements on Mexico and assuming he knew everything he needed to know, and that in particular is really what's hurting him. Audiard was, prior to this film, fairly well received for movies like Rust and Bone, but this movie kind of killed his reputation, which is odd because it's the same movie that got him his Best Director nomination. So I think there is so much hate towards Audiard in particular. I mean, most of the hate is going towards Gascon, but there's a general feeling that Audiard was the wrong person to tell this story and he should have done more research. And even if some of the flashy direction that he does is just showy enough for voters to feel compelled, I really don't think he has any realistic shot at winning this. Fourth most likely to win is James Mangold for A Complete Unknown. So this was one of the biggest surprises of Oscar nomination morning. He got the DGA nomination, which is impressive in and of itself, and Mangold, he's a very reliable working man director. He's done movies like Logan and Ford v Ferrari and Walk the Line. He's someone that he works within the system, and he works well within the system. He doesn't always have the biggest, boldest directorial vision, which makes it so weird that they would go out of their way to nominate him. Even if you love the movie, I think if you genuinely believe that this is one of the top 5 best directorial achievements of the year, you probably haven't seen enough movies. The film is solidly directed. It's fine. There's nothing really wrong with the way it's directed, but honestly, it comes across as very boring and very standard, and I would be absolutely shocked if he got enough votes to win. The fact that he even got nominated over someone like Denis Villeneuve or even John M. Chu. If you're going to nominate something that's less auteur-like, John M. Chu at least is doing more with that overall vision, to say nothing of people like Robert Eggers or Jane Schonbrun, who did bigger work that the Oscars were never going to go for in this category. But yeah, this is a perfectly fine directorial achievement, but it is most certainly not going to win. Third most likely to win is Coralie Fargeat for The Substance. So Fargeat would be my choice if I had a ballot, because this is, without question, the showiest direction out of all the 5 nominees. It is so incredibly bold and in your face. There's nothing subtle about it, which, depending on who you ask, is a pro or a con. I really love the way that this film is directed. I love how so much is told visually and through sound effects, and it's just such a bold, daring achievement that the Oscars are never going to pick it. It's certainly, because a movie like this, there's going to be people that love it and there's going to be people who hate it. And fortunately, the movie was just loved enough that it was able to get the nomination in this category, but I know that there are going to be some Oscar voters who are turned off by just how extreme and in your face everything is. We've seen as much from some of the anonymous ballots that this is definitely not going to be everyone's cup of tea. But if you want to award the biggest expression of direction, then I think it's more of an expression than the previous two nominees. I think she is going to get a solid amount of votes, and I'm ultimately going to have her at number 3, but realistically, I don't think any of the bottom 3 have a very good shot of winning. None of them have any major precursors, and while a few critics have rewarded her for this really, really inspiring vision, it's most definitely not the thing that Oscar voters are going to be compelled to vote for. Second most likely to win is Brady Corbet for The Brutalist. Oh man, I struggled with this. I really did, because early on it seemed like Corbett had the best chance of winning. He won the Golden Globe and he won BAFTA. So those are two very, very big precursors for this category. Now, the thing with Corbett is he is very much an unknown quantity. This is his third film, and the first two were very small releases. So for a lot of voters, he kind of came out of nowhere with this movie. Now, granted, it is a very, very impressive directorial feat that's kind of hard to ignore. The fact that someone took $7 million and made a 3.5-hour period epic, that just feels like it has to be rewarded, because it's not as in your face as something like what Farjat does, but it's such a flex. It's such a, oh man, this is a real movie. The way movies used to be. They don't make them like this anymore. People say that for at least 3 movies every year. I think they are making movies like this anymore, but that's what people say. And it makes sense that enough people would be so drawn to the achievement, even if they didn't vote for the film in picture. I thought for a while that Brutalist felt like a Roma or Power of the Dog, where everyone really, really respected the achievement and were going to support that and not the director himself. But I think the big thing that holds him back, one, the movie no longer feels competitive to win picture, and 2, Corbet as a director is just so new on the scene. He's kind of like the new kid in town. And even though what he's done on The Brutalist is so technically impressive, I just feel like when I look at the list of previous Best Director winners, if they're not attached to the movie that's winning picture, if they're a lone director, then they're probably someone who's been in the industry for a while and has built up a lot of goodwill. And Corbet really hasn't done that. And I think some voters might think from his interviews that he's a little too full of himself. Some voters might feel like he really hasn't fully proved his place as an Oscar winner, even though this one film is really impressive. Fox Lux and Childhood of a Leader are both such small films that didn't do much in the award season when they came out. And so I just don't think Corbet has that many eyes on him as someone who's due for an Oscar. I think eyes are going to be on whatever he does next, but I just don't think he's going to take it for this film. Number 1 most likely to win is Sean Baker for Anora. So I struggled with this because when I saw the film, it didn't seem like the type of movie that would win Best Director. In many ways, The Brutalist is much more of a director-type movie because of the achievement. And yet, when Sean Baker won the DGA, that was really striking. It was something that I really had to think about, because on the one hand, Brutalist is flashier, but what Baker is doing, first of all, the film is not flashy. It's very naturalistic in its the way it presents itself. Sean Baker does have a definitive style. You know you're looking at a Sean Baker movie because of how naturalism is and the types of characters that he chooses to focus on. And a lot more people have seen Baker's previous movies than Corbet's previous movies. Florida Project was an Oscar nominee. Tangerine was kind of close. It was in the conversation for a little while. Red Rocket got a little bit of conversation love. People know who Sean Baker is. Baker has built up a resume, and it makes sense that with Anora, this is the kind of movie that voters are like, okay, Sean, your time has come. We're going to reward you now. And the movie seems like it's in a very, very good position to win Best Picture. And so, my gut tells me that Baker is going to come along with that. Now, it's really, really tough because Corbet seemed like the lock, and Corbet does have two big precursors with BAFTA and Golden Globe. Notably, Critics' Choice did not help. They gave it to John M. Chu for Wicked, which was such a bizarre choice, but I think it's very interesting that they didn't go for Corbet when he was perceived as the clear frontrunner. And you could argue that critics have gone with Baker if he really was the frontrunner? I don't know. I think that this is going to be one of the more competitive categories of the night. But when you look at Baker and Corbet, and I don't think anyone outside of those two has a real shot at the win, my gut is telling me that even though what Corbet did is more technically impressive, voters are going to be more compelled to vote for Baker because they're already familiar with him as a filmmaker and he's been in the industry for longer. I think that's sort of a running theme throughout a lot of these Oscar categories is when in doubt, you go with the person who's been in the industry for longer and is more due for something like this. If you just showed up and you did something great, they'll nominate you, but they're going to wait to see what you do with that. And so my official prediction is Sean Baker for Anora. So thank you very much for watching, and tune in tomorrow when I will be taking a look at the category of Best Actress. See you then.